The Flyin Lion says,
boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
Just give me a reason to drink some Guinness in the morning.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's definitely tougher to be an academy player than it is a pro.
Soccer's my favorite sport now.
The Jersey Swap was
my car of the week, trivia question of the week. Welcome back to the Flyin Lion Podcast. This is the off-season edition, number 2 here for this pod. We're going into 2025 and we're starting to prepare for it, but this episode will kind of break down a little bit of some new signings going on, end of the season notes, some player info that we got in this past week. Second part of the episode, we're going to give you our Jersey Swaps of the year. That's become kind of our main thing that we've done on this pod, and our card of the week as well. So we'll give you kind of our year update on that. Talk a little bit about some international break action for some of our players as well, and just miscellaneous things because that's the off season. Sam, how we doing?
Doing good. Took a break from soccer for a good couple days, right? Just not checking anything, and then every other day it felt like we were getting an update on our potential new signing here. So that was exciting. New numbers coming out. Biggest numbers we've ever seen. So we'll touch on that. But doing well. I actually just got back from Houston. Voice is a little gone, but not enough to keep me off the pod.
I love it. Love the dedication. Did you see any MLS attire down in Houston? Any Dynamo stuff?
Not too much. Did swing by the Dynamo Stadium. Had to see all the stadiums in Houston. It's kind of a thing, right? As a sports guy, you gotta visit a city and at least try and see all the spots. Wish I would have done that when I went to Philly, but the Union spot is a little down the road from the center of the other Philly spots over there. But yeah, Houston was really cool. Dynamo Stadium is actually smaller than I expected.
Really?
Yeah, kind of interesting. The outside of it, they had like a mural that if anybody out there is a nerd and plays video games and knows Apex, kind of looks like some Apex characters on the side of their building. And then like the top of it almost kind of reminds me of the bird nest in China from the Olympics, right? That stadium, how it kind of like encloses the stadium a little bit. So it's interesting.
I had no idea. Honestly, I thought like prior to this pod that like Houston, I can't remember, did they build this stadium for the MLS team or did they use this like it was for football or something and converted it to soccer?
No idea. It feels like they made it for the MLS team, but it looks pretty small with the space that they've got. I don't know how many capacity, but to me it looked like 17,000, something like that.
They always have it rocking down there. I think we played 2 years ago down in Houston. So, obviously we played in Dallas this year. We'll probably due for another visit down there. But yeah, no, good visit down there, I'm sure. As Sam alluded to, though, we had a huge finalization of a player for FC Cincinnati. So I want to actually, last episode we said Kevin Denkey, but Tom Bogert, shout out to him for correcting everyone for how you pronounce it. Apparently it's Kevin Denkey. So you say Denkey, at the end there. But completed it this week for $16.2 million, possibly more with add-ons, up to 10% of the sale going to his former club if he gets moved on past Cincinnati. But it's going to be probably a long contract for him. Everyone is kind of pointing towards 3 to 4 years that we'll have him, which is honestly so big for this team and moving forward. And really the ambition that we have, even in the time of doubt with Lucho, that, hey, we might have brought in the biggest striker, out there and possibly even in the European market as well.
Yeah, I know. Crazy ambition from the club, right? But yeah, I mean, like we kind of talked about, going over all the stats, everything from last episode, being able to kind of add another stat, which is, possibly the largest inbound transfer fee in league history. I mean, go big or go home from FC Cincinnati. And I know listening to a lot of Tom Bogert's coverage on this, he's been kind of the biggest guy on this signing. He's really kind of made it outspoken that FC Cincinnati doesn't want to be a small market team, right? And I think you've seen that from the other Cincinnati teams, other professional teams, right? So being kind of small market and embracing it, if you will, whereas FC Cincinnati is like, no, like we're a soccer city. We're going to embrace being a big market team.
Yeah, and I mean, even after the end of the season, we're not even done with the season, and the guy's in the building, in the middle of his season, looking at this club and saying, "Is this my next move?" For a guy that's 23, could have moved to bigger clubs in Europe. That's typically, what we see. You have the Golden Boot winner in Belgium that goes on to, a Premier League team or to a German team. But no, we have this project where we can, sell this to these players. Miles Robinson last year, bringing these guys in, showing them the facilities, getting their name up in lights. Like I wish we had somebody, that had captured that. But yeah, no, it's really special. And I think I want to reiterate it. The largest inbound transfer fee in league history. I mean, that is huge. And in the coverage, like I'm sure we're going to get it for months, but in this time, it's crazy. Like the MLS playoffs are still going on. So we talked about it, off air. Like the league hasn't even announced this yet, but it's probably a timing thing. The fact that their playoffs are still going on for 2024, this guy's for 2025. But it had to be, sealed, and delivered from the MLS to say, hey, we're the final approval on this, which is kind of crazy that they, do have to sign off on it. But crazy ambition, like we're saying. I think Tom had reiterated too, like, this is a turning point, hopefully, for the league in some ways as well. You get this guy in his stride. I think Capers in Chicago was also a Belgian League Golden Boot winner, but was a little bit older, had kind of proven himself in Europe. Denkey had not, and 23's had a few good seasons, but he's really breaking out. He's going to hit his stride, and if we want to call it like his peak of his career around 25, 26, even further, what a time to be in the city for this club, and hopefully to kind of build a roster even around him moving forward as some of the other guys age out too.
Yeah, absolutely. Having him hit that stride, I'm almost wondering, if he's thinking about the difference, in the leagues, right? To where our schedule is very different. So once he comes in officially, probably in January, he's still got, another month, month and a half to, train and get ready. Whereas, in Belgium, you'd be playing. So I wonder how, he'll adapt to that. Hopefully, like you said, he still continues to stay hot and stay in form, which, I mean, if he's training right now or was training before the rumors like he was going to play, right, the normal schedule, then he should be fine come January and February. So what you're really looking at is when he does start the season, does he peter off in, June, July, August, because he'll be tired.
Yeah, good point. And I mean, he had been building up for a possible transfer to some of these teams in the summer. So, how much of his mental attention was towards that? Nothing goes through. He's talking with FC over the past couple months, and this comes to fruition. From a player standpoint, Sam, like if you look at this and you're saying, wow, what a steal. But from his standpoint, like, okay, he's playing in this city, comparable to Cincinnati, smaller than Cincinnati. We're a small market here, but like comparatively, like bigger market, larger attention. He's going to get a huge paycheck. He's going to be the guy. Like, I mean, that's a huge draw for guys, the money wise, obviously, but being like the person, knowing like, hey, I'm going to get the minutes here. I'm going to be able to play. That's important for a lot of people, and that security as well. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I don't know if Kevin's ever been to the U.S. That's the other thing that I would always want to ask these guys if we had the opportunity. Cheeto, Teenage Hidebe obviously had played in the MLS, but some of these other guys, like, have they ever been to the U.S.? Have they ever heard of Cincinnati? It's kind of crazy. But shout out to the scouting team, for finding these guys. Obviously this guy is a stud and everyone kind of had him on their radar, but to coup him, I think is great. We want to shout out, we reached out to the Belgian football podcast and asked them, we're going to actually be having an interview with them here coming up too, but their kind of response initially about this was that his all-around game is strong. He's not great in the air, which I think we touched on the last episode. But physically, I mean, the dude is solid. I mean, his pace is good too. He's going to be good either as a solo striker, but does also kind of depend on the system he's playing in. So he can work with another guy or have somebody kind of with him. I think he's had that before with another guy that he had on his team. But like we mentioned, top scorer in the Belgian Pro League last season. He kind of had a slower start this year, they said, but just due more in terms to the failed transfer over the summer. But clicking again, scoring for his international team for Togo. We just saw that this past weekend. And more importantly, I really want to kind of emphasize this because I don't think it's been said. He's been wanting a move for a while from the club. And the club also, this would be their record deal for them outbound. So they would make a huge investment off of this. And they're going to use this money to help finance the building of their new training complex, Sam, which, I mean, is huge for clubs if you look at Cincinnati for bringing in new players. If this is, the money they're going to use for that to hopefully build their team too, like it makes a lot of sense. They're in 14th place over in Belgium. So are they fighting for relegation? Like there's a lot that goes into that. And if this dude's at like more of a peak and you're going to maximize his money, it makes sense in understanding where they're going to put that.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like for both parties, it's going to be the biggest ever, right? So just a huge signing on both sides. But yeah, if this is going to be able to help them finance, their new training complex, hats off to them, right? Because that's kind of what we did last year, right? Being able to sell off some of our guys, be able to either finance new moves or finance things within our club. So
Sure.
Business is business, and hopefully we can get this done so that way both sides can be able to get something good out of it.
And like even hearing from them though, just to understand like the, I want to say impact of this move, but they thought it was a steal for us. There's other European clubs like you mentioned, like Lyon, in France that had almost made this agreement. Tottenham was interested as well. So pretty crazy, that we swapped in and got this guy. I'm really hoping that he steps up to the plate and delivers. Bottom line, I'm excited. He's got a few more games, I think, for the club probably before he comes, like Sam said, in January. But hoping that he can get settled and acquainted with some of the other guys. And we'll kind of keep following him over the next few months, I'm sure.
I was about to say, you can almost guarantee every single episode from now on, it'll probably be Kevin Denkey, right? A lot more of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Other end of the season notes, though, we wanted to, again, kind of touch on things that since last episode have happened, but Matt Miazga is back and he's running. He's on the field. This is a big deal. He's coming off of his meniscus and PCL surgery. He's probably about, 3-4 months now out from that, so pretty big for him to be running on his own. Doesn't mean he's cutting and, up and jumping and physical, and in contact.
Straight lines.
He's on the field. He's running. And I think that's huge. If we look at the date, it's November 20th. We don't have a game for probably 3 months that means something. So another 3 months for Matt to kind of put it into gear. I'm really excited about that timeline for him. And for Nick Haglund as well. We heard from him in the exit interviews. He's close to running as well. He's doing some Ultra G. So for those who aren't familiar, zero gravity treadmills are amazing. You can put some of that body weight through it without feeling anything. And I'm happy for him to be coming back. The dude's been through so many injuries. So hopefully he'll probably be hanging out with Matt, I would imagine, and starting some running clubs over the winter. And then some other news, just random tidbits here, but somebody pointed out online, and I thought it was interesting. If you go and you look on FC Cincinnati's website, Teenage Hadebe is listed as a designated player right now. It's got to be a mistake, but it is interesting that it's listed there. Like, clearly this has happened in the past. We've seen that before with some guys. sometimes we go and look and see if that kind of tips the cap to what's going to be happening soon. But yeah, I don't think in any world, do you think that Teenage is going to be a DP? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so as well. Especially since, I feel like in the back line, if anybody's going to be DP, I feel like Cheeto or, Miles would be more DP like worthy as far as just like value, right? But yeah, I think this is more of like kind of what I talked about last week is my honorary card, like with MLS.com messing up a little bit. You got some of those people that are kind of in off-season mode, right? So they're either, trying to rework their website as we speak or, making changes or something and just hoping nobody sees it. But of course, we are on it. We're looking at everything and we're gonna say something if we see it. Now, is it going to be, right, wrong? That's for them to decide to come out with. But yeah, I don't think it's anything. Hopefully they'll fix that mistake. I mean, if he is a DP, like what does that say about, what we're doing and what the offseason looks like?
When you bring him in, like you bring him in on a non-DP signing, obviously, and you'd have to give him a big pay raise, I would imagine. But again, self-admittedly, we are not a contract podcast. Like we never like have come out to said we are. Like we'll let other people do that. But yeah, and just kind of looking at the scheme of things, you have Lucho as a DP right now. You might have Orishano, maybe not. Obi, it sounds like his contract getting knocked down, like is going to hopefully knock him off of that. So you have some options with that. If you go in-house, you have some good options, but ideally, again, you want to be able to go outside and to spend this high dollar on some of these guys like we've seen, with Denkey. So interesting, something to look out for. I'm going to keep a close eye to see if the Lucho citizenship changes on the FCC website, some interesting things coming up with him as well. But we did have, again, some of the other end of the year interviews. One of them that kind of caught my attention was Luca Orishano's, Sam. He was talking a little bit about his time in Cincy. The dude definitely prefers to be up front. Like that was the glaring thing that I saw. Didn't like come out and straight say like I did not like left wing back, but by the end of the season, he's like, I felt comfortable up front. You looked comfortable, man. Like you looked solid there. Yeah. So moving forward for next year, like I fully expect them to start to integrate him in a good position and one that he can stay in consistently up in the front line.
Yeah, I think so as well. But from that exit interview, I think Orishano, I think obviously you could feel the emotion as the Lucho situation's kind of going on, right? Everybody else is having to answer questions about him during that, end of the year interviews and stuff. Obviously, he wasn't there, so but
he was there. He just didn't go to the.
He was there for his, with the team,
right.
But I mean, him saying, Lucho had, a big influence on him to, come to the club in general. I think that spoke volumes, obviously, right through the rest of his interview. But yeah, definitely looked comfortable up top. I think it'll be interesting. I know you and I have talked about with the signing of Denkey, maybe like we'll go to a 4-3-3, right? To where we've got, maybe another winger signing that's coming, right? I think that could be a possibility because a lot of our forwards, they're just not number 9s, right? They could be used a little bit more outside, attacking inward. So I think that'll be something interesting that you could look at Pat trying to do in the offseason here.
Well, and hopefully, like, if that's something that we want to do, can we implement that, in the spring training part of the season? Like, we saw him kind of teeter with some different things, obviously players in different positions, but can we ahead of time kind of prepare for different situations? I kind of compare it to the U.S. men's national team right now. For those who are familiar, the U.S. men's national team is playing a very traditional formation, but they have a lot of guys that are playing the left wing back spot differently, like Anthony Robinson is, or Tim Weah sneaking inside. Christian Pulisic. Like it's a lot of dynamic positioning, which I think is what world football has become. We've seen it with Man City, we've seen it with some of the other top teams. But I feel like that's something that we're going to probably adapt to, and who you bring in on like the left wing back or left back spot can kind of help to seal, is this the way that we're going to play or not? Obviously, if Lucho stays, is a big dictator of, the way that we want to play. But that was a great point, especially with like the Lucho part of things. You could see the emotion in the players' answers, and obviously they're being professional. Hey, I'm going to leave, Lucho stuff to him and his decision and whatnot. But yeah, to answer that, and like Orishano had mentioned, Lucho was so influential in him coming to the club, and saying, hey, he told me about the city, the project, the players we have. So again, it just proves like his impact is massive off the field, as the captain, the leader, but also like the recruiter, and that's a big thing that it's hard to replace. So the update on him, we saw him at the Cyclones game, Sam. He's apparently who knew that the Argentinians were into hockey, but Orishano and Assad were with him. They were ringing that bell. So kind of interesting to see, you have this guy that doesn't go to his interview for FCC. He does his ESPN Argentina interview. We don't really hear anything about him for the rest of the week, and then he just pops up at a Cyclones game. Like, did not have that on my bingo card.
Yeah, I wonder if it was one of those things where like the kids wanted to go see a hockey game, right? And he just called his other Argentinian buddy. He was like, "Hey, what are you doing tonight? Nothing. Cool. You want to go to the Cyclones game, right?" And of course, if you got to show up to the Cyclones game, they're gonna want you to do something, right? So, was it a bell or was it a siren?
Oh, might have been the siren. You're right. It was.
Siren.
I
Crank the
misspoken.
siren.
It was the
Yeah.
siren. You're exactly right.
Yeah. So good times over there at the Cyclones games. So hopefully they brought a dub or brought some good vibes over there.
You think
But
this
yeah,
is
very
like?
interesting. Like you said, hadn't heard anything, seen anything. He pops up at a Cyclones game.
Do you think this is like a Lucho like Cincinnati bucket list item? Go to a Cyclones game.
God, I
Like
hope
cross
not.
it off the list
Yeah.
before a possible departure. I don't know.
Sit
Online,
before I say goodbye to Cincinnati, like type thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. But online, if you read into all the craziness, like Corinthians in Brazil is going crazy after like rumors for this guy. Sao Paulo, where we got Brunner. And obviously Boca too, because those guys pick up word of him, and it's like obviously we're gonna jump on that. I did kind of find it funny. Like I think Tom Bogert mentioned it. I hate to keep going back to what he's saying, but in their talk about Lucho, it was really interesting. Lucho and his stuff that he says to ESPN Argentina in this interview. Oh, I want to go back to Boca. It's my dream to always play for Boca. And Tom's like, he did play for Boca. Like he's already done that, So it's like, okay, is this really like what's going on here or not? But again, like we mentioned last time, like I don't know. We'll see what happens. Is the Denkey early signing, any indication of us trying to keep him? I think like, hey, it shows ambition, and like if this is part of your complaint, like let's get this guy on board and at least show you for next year, like here's the pieces. They probably, I'm not gonna lie, they probably included him in a lot of what was going on with other players too. And like, hey, this is what our thoughts are. Like, what do you think? At least I would assume, but who knows?
Yeah, I would hope so. Like we talked about, he should be in more of those meetings, especially if we want him to stay, right? The as big of a player as he is for the club, he should be in those meetings, and so hopefully he, helped in not maybe not the scouting of, but watching, Denkey's game, like going, hey, like this is somebody I could fit with. Looks like somebody that we can really play off of. But yeah, hopefully early signing, we can get kind of the motivation going for Lucho to stay. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on in the club as well.
There's a lot up in the air. Like I felt like last year it was like, okay, it's crazy, who's staying, who's going, but we have like short amount of time to figure this all out. Like,
Yeah.
we have what, a month, 6 weeks before the guys have to report for training camp. But this time we have a little bit more time, and you see some guys that are here already, staying for a little while, or others that have already gone and departed for the off season and then coming back. It'll be interesting. In the next week, I believe we'll get a better understanding, though, of some of the roster updates. I believe hopefully by the end of November, especially with Luca Orishano, the decision for the loan in the buy should be done possibly around December 1st. Doesn't mean they're going to announce it at that time, but it will be interesting. All things point to the trigger of this. The player wants to say, I think let's just put a bow on it and say, it's happening, but never say never. It looked like, if you go and you watch this interview, like the Vasco da Gama ownership, or, the people that were talking in this interview, were very much like upset about the option to buy for us. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they see how well this guy did this year, and they're like, man, we royally like messed up this.
They pretty much were just talking about like, yeah, like we're gonna go back, reevaluate why this happened, how they got a great deal, like going through
Well,
like pretty much what went wrong for their club.
and what's interesting is, like, about a month ago, like, I'm pretty sure the ownership like filed for bankruptcy, or like they had a lot of financial issues. So, I mean, you're gonna get a couple million from him, I would imagine, from us, but still, like, for a club scheme of things, like, that's a bigger issue. So maybe
Oh
they
yeah.
need to have more internal discussions about that than talking about it for our one player. Um, Very interesting situation with that one. And the loans are always the thing, like we mentioned with Kelsey too. What's going to happen with that one? Who knows, man? It seems like even from the last time, he does his exit interview and is like, "Hey, I enjoyed my time in Cincinnati." Of course, he's going to say that, but you know, maybe we do see a Kevin and Kevin.
I think what people did say could happen, right? And I believe I said this at the end of the year as well. What um we could get like another loan spell, right, for
True.
Kelsey,
True.
right? So you could have Shakhtar saying like, "Hey, keep him. We'll just extend the loan for another 6 months
Yep.
or something like that." So that way FC could have him for, the beginning of the season, see how he's doing, right? And then if Shakhtar wants to take him back, or, we want to keep him, whatnot, I think that can be reworked to where they I like we talked about, the development of Kevin Kelsey is so curious, like it's so interesting, right? He hit the ground running with FC Cincinnati, had a bunch of goals in, few games, right?
Right.
And it looked like, oh my God, we found our striker. We're definitely going to keep this guy.
Right.
And he petered off, due to the lack of minutes, right? He kind of fell off with Pat a little bit. Whether or not that was due to, the lack of maturity, right? Or just the lack of, the style of play that Pat wanted to play. But yeah, I think with him, I think it'll be interesting to see. We could potentially see just another like loan move for him, especially if that U22 spot's available.
I think that's a great shout. We talked about it earlier in the year. I wish there was a little bit more transparency on like minute restrictions for loans. Like, we don't
Yeah.
get a lot of that information. Like, that's between, the clubs. So did that have anything to do with it and why he didn't play as much? Like, I don't know. But if you look at this year, like, the striker position was so unproven, and there wasn't like a veteran guy for him to like learn under. I mean, he was at 19 at the time, right? So if you bring in Denkey, like, obviously he's new to the club, but you have this young striker that can learn from him and see like this guy that's been proven, in a bigger league. Maybe that partnership thrives that way. They're both big guys, in terms of like physicality. Kelsey's a lot taller, compared to Denkey. So imagine that front line of the two of them. That would be something else. But we had some other news come out just yesterday. There was some development on the West End district. So just north of the stadium, FC Cincinnati is putting in a $300 million investment for this site. Just yesterday, some renderings come out. Again, like Sam mentioned, earlier about the nerd part of things. I'm going to nerd out a little bit about this part. I love like the stadium and architecture type stuff. But seeing that there's going to be a hotel and an apartment building that's going to be built in that corner there, a common area in the middle, I always felt like they should maximize this space, especially for away games, for people to kind of come together and watch the games. I really love the ballpark village model of St. Louis, where you have this covered space that everyone can kind of sit there and watch the games together. It sounds like this is going to be an outdoor one, but it'll kind of flow into the concourse. It opens up possibilities for like a future like Walk of Fame, is how I would describe it too. Could we see some FCC legends along this walk? That's kind of my 2 cents on that too. But we're finally getting some more concrete, idea of what's going to be going there. It's just been a pit for the whole year, and there's been a lot up in the air. For a while, it was talked about the whole thing being used. It sounds like this is going to be maybe one phase of the project. I would ultimately imagine the club's goal is, if we're going to host an all-star game in 2026 or some other events around the World Cup, like we want to have this concrete space to enjoy these games or all of these events, no matter what it is, and to get some movement on that. So I'm glad to see something happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you had said, now that they're finally coming out with renderings, it gets the excitement built up more, right? Rather than just looking at the pit every time you go to a game, just seeing a fenced in area of like, ooh, like something's coming soon, right? But yeah, I think
Parks and Rec.
Yes,
It
yes,
reminds me of the pit episode.
the pit of the playground that's supposed to be there, right?
Yeah.
That's I think, like you said, I think they'll eventually just do it phase by phase. And obviously we're not a part of the project or really know where, like, what does that look like, right? Like what phase will be completed first or prioritized first. Hopefully that fan experience is the first one to be prioritized, and then maybe the, apartments or, the hotel, whatever else they put there, right? I guess, hotel would, I guess, fall under that fan experience part, but I would hope that would be the main priority, especially if, like you said, we're looking to create a better atmosphere around the stadium. I know OTR has been great, but it's still like a little bit of a walk to where, at the Red Stadium, they have, tin roof, they have the Holy Grail, like everything's like right there, right across the street. So for right now,
you have the pitch, but I mean,
yeah, we've
more
got the
options.
pitch, but yeah, exactly, more
great.
options. Being able to have 5 or 6, right, rather than just one, that you can walk across the street to straight to the game. So I think I'm looking forward to see a lot more updates, like you said.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you look at it even from like a player standpoint, like we might not think of it this way, but like selling a player on the project of like internationally, these stadiums are so isolated, and then you come here and it's built into the infrastructure of the city. And then you can kind of sell them and say like, and possibly you could live in this high rise next to the stadium. I mean, that would be incredible. Like in St. Louis, some of the ball players actually live in those high rises in that ballpark village, and they just walk to work, which I think is a pretty cool sell if you think about it. So something to keep an eye on. I'm glad that we're getting some updates. There was kind of this article as well that came out about a new arena that would be built down by Music Hall as well. So how that would change that dynamic in that area. You could have possibly, 2 arenas down in the banks and then 2 up by Music Hall there in OTR or West End area, which would be kind of interesting for the city. And then the convention center in the middle. So exciting times. There's a lot going on there. We'll see what happens. Sam, did you want to transition us to the next segment?
Yeah. We've got, something else that came out at the end of the season, a letter to the supporters from Carl H. Lindner III. He just to basically just summarize it, they had said that, we as a club remain committed in our belief that the best is yet to come, right? So they expect silverware, so do we. So it's nice to see that they still believe that the best is yet to come. They have kind of summarized their whole paragraphs, right, or letter in faith, right? And so whether that be having faith on their end or faith in the supporters, faith in the players, just remaining faithful to the club in general. But it was nice to see them touch on their successes from the years, right? So not only MLS success, being able to be top three in the East again, but also FCC2 success in winning the East. They also completed a goal of 10 mini pitches by 2024 around Cincinnati. We've seen them in the community. I know Ryan has touched a lot the past couple weeks on, the impact Lucho's had at those mini pitches, being at those community events, being able to play with the kids that are going to be the next generation of Cincinnati soccer, but also at TQL having U.S. men's national team events. No matter how much crap we give him, Kenny Chesney at TQL Stadium, even though he ruined the grass. But yeah, next year, I think it'll be really cool. They also touched on next year being the 10th anniversary of FC Cincinnati. So I think that'll be really exciting. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that heading into the season, this offseason, really, on what we think festivities will be like or, anything like that. But finally, the passing of, Marco Angulo also, I thought that was nice touching that they put that in the letter to be able to, help them grieve, help us grieve as fans, and his family as well.
Yeah, I mean, even since the last episode, we didn't mention it, but prayers to his family and to his friends as well. Again, something that is terrible, and hope to never see again. But Marco was a great, joyful person for the club in his time here, and we'll always remember him that way. So yeah, great summary though about what he mentioned. I think what I took out of it was just accessibility to the ownership. Like if you look, I hate to compare it to the other like teams in the city, but like you don't know what the Castellinis think. Like all they say is like, where else are you going to go? And then you have Mike Brown. He doesn't say anything either. So like Carl Linder coming out and saying to everyone, like, thank you for supporting. Like we did all these great things. We look forward to building. And then they're like backing it up with action, like right away. Like, that's huge. And to me, it's like understanding where he's coming from or where the ownership is coming from and their goals, like massive, and as a fan base, you feel more connected to that. So there's a lot to learn in the other franchises. Maybe he learned, like you mentioned, even in past episodes, like he probably learned from the other clubs that he was at when he was with the Reds, when he was with, the Bengals, or even, with some of the other guys that own the club, like they're all a part of it. So shout out to them for that. I think that was pretty cool to see. Everyone gives them a lot of crap about it every year for what they say. And like, of course you're going to say this and come out and you could have done better, but like, I appreciate it. And to understand again, where they're coming from is really cool. We're going to take a break. I have a trivia question for you guys before we go here. Sam, if you're ready, has FC Cincinnati ever signed anyone from the Belgian Pro League? So again, Kevin Denkey is coming from this league to FC Cincinnati. Has anyone ever been signed for FC Cincinnati before?
Yes. Yeah. I believe Yuya Kubo from Genk was actually from the Belgian league. I don't know about anybody else, but that's the first person that pops off in my mind.
All right, Sam's locking it in. We'll give you guys the answers when we come back. Hey, FC Cincinnati fans. We are pumped to share our new sponsor, Peak Cocktails.
I'm sipping on the passion fruit margarita, which is so spicy, and it makes me feel like I'm on the beach.
Ooh, that sounds great. I'm drinking the Blood Orange Spritz, which has a great subtle ginger flavor coming from its scientifically formulated recipe to promote exercise recovery, enhance relaxation, and support a better night's sleep.
Ryan, that's exactly why I love them. Their cocktails are designed to fit seamlessly into your health-conscious lifestyle, giving you the enjoyment of a delicious adult drink without the downsides of alcohol.
Guys, next time you are looking for that post-workout drink or an afternoon pick-me-up, grab a Peak Cocktail. Visit them at www.peakcocktails.com and use the code Flyin Lion at checkout to get 20% off your first order. Zach, enjoy your drink. Thanks again to everyone for listening tonight on this second episode of the off-season. Soccer never sleeps here in Cincinnati, man. I love it. Like, there's always new news, like we mentioned. from the last episode. We're going to keep you guys up to date with all the stuff going on with the team, outside of the team. It's pretty cool to see. So international break, hits this past week, and we have 3 different guys associated with the club and some even alumnus that, are playing for their international teams. Miles Robinson trained with the U.S. men's national team, but he did not play. Kind of honestly surprised, Sam. Like, I don't know if Tim Ream is like the solution for the 2026 World Cup for the U.S. men's national team. That's for a separate episode. But like you would think like, okay, Austin Trusty, Miles Robinson, like they'd get a look now for potentially the future. Miles doesn't get a single minute in this camp. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it's for a bigger podcast, but nice to see that he's able to, like we said, previously, he's able to continue to play soccer, continue to train. Got 2 wins, right? So excited about that. U.S. men's national team played really well. Both of those games. Unfortunately, like you said, Miles, no minutes, but I think as he continues to play for FC Cincinnati, hopefully next season, we'll continue to see him involved with the U.S. men's national team. Obviously, Poch likes him, right? Or else he wouldn't be invited. Right. So hopefully he can continue to build on that with us because that's where he's going to get the most minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, past him, like former striker Brandon Vasquez gets called in for this camp, plays in both games. First game down in Jamaica, had a couple chances, one-on-one with the goalie that probably should have put away. But cool to see Brandon being involved. Like he didn't really get as much as a shot with prior management. Maybe that's a testament to some of the injuries going on with the U.S. men's national team right now. But I really hope that guy can take it and really make it his own. I know Pepe's going to make it a little hard for him. He scored in 3 straight games now for the U.S. But Brandon, you have a home here in Cincinnati if you ever want to come back. Still love your game. Love seeing you out there. We'll always support you. I think that's the biggest thing I've taken away from some of the guys in the last few seasons is just how fun it is to watch some of them, even on different teams. Teenage Shadebe, though, played for Zimbabwe, African Cup of Nations qualification. 90 minutes against Cameroon. They lost 1-2. I went and watched some of their highlights. Hadebe he was not the reason that they got scored on for either one of those. We'll just leave it at that. He did pretty decent overall, just in kind of looking at the stats and everything. Was playing in that left center back spot, which I think next year he's going to own and make it his like complete spot. Like I know him and Murphy will probably battle for it and it'll be good competition. We'll have good depth there, but I expect Hadebe to make that his own spot.
Yeah, finding Zimbabwe stats in general is probably just a rabbit hole that you have to go down.
Well, right, and you watch like YouTube videos of it and you click on the first one and it's just advertisements. Like they just show the little thumbnail of the like photo of them playing and you're like, oh, I'm going to go look at this. And then there's no video. You're like, yeah. All right, let's go to the other one and see. And finally you get it. And the field is like, I hate to say it, it's just like a dust bowl. I'm like, man,
is this it's brown. Yeah, it's just,
is this TQL after Kenny Chesney or? But it was interesting. I really am more like into the African Cup of Nations qualifying now. With him, with Denkey, Penza, that's a sore subject, but hopefully Cheeto, with Nigeria too. So there's a lot of those games that'll be prevalent to what's going on with the club. We've seen a big influx of those players for us, so that's something to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just touched on Denkey. Togo, right? Playing Liberia, lost 1-0, but he only played 13 minutes. So he was, on for a little bit. Not too bad. But then you have here that they won against Guinea 3-0 dub. Actually had a solid goal. Did you see that highlight, Ryan?
Did. So pretty cool one if you guys want to go and find it. He takes it from like midfield all the way down. The defense wasn't great for Guinea on this play, but I think he beats 2 guys, gets it on his right foot and hits a low shot. And again, one of the situations in this game where the ball is like bouncing up and down, and the keeper, like I think dives for it and it bounces right over him, but it was in the corner. So it was a good shot. But a nice solo goal for him. Some of the other highlights of both games, actually, especially the Cameroon one, I was interested in for teenage, but especially for Kevin with Liberia. Just how physical he is. Like, he put out a highlight tape on Instagram today, and like his hold up play is phenomenal. So I'm really excited about that next year. Even if they do use him as like a primary guy, like I think he could do it. He just looks so comfortable at with his back to goal, and then having guys around him to feed off of him.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's nice to have, like you said, nice to have time to talk about these players for FC Cincinnati that are on international break. Them being able to get some time to continue to play soccer.
Yeah, and a reason for us to talk about them too, which is fun.
Yeah.
Because they're our guys, and we're done with our season. So to see them play for their international team is pretty cool. We did want to recap this year, just kind of like a Spotify rap version like we did last year for jersey swaps. Every week we dive into who is our jersey swap of the week. Who was our guy that we would go and seek out and say, hey, I want your jersey because you played awesome. So some games were tougher than others. But the most jersey swaps we had for the season was Luca Orishano. He had 16 selections for jersey swap. I said him 12 times. Zach 1 and Sam 3. All those who are listening already know this. But yeah, last episode I touched on it. He was my guy for the year, but collectively for the podcast, I think Lucho was a close second though.
Yeah, so Lucho was a close second with 10, so actually not that close. But Kubo was in third. He had 7. Buko was in fourth, and he was tied with, I think, 4 other players with 5 in total. So nice little top 4 there. I think some of the words that we were talking about, you, Zach, and I, were that I think Zach had said he was kind of surprised that Assad only had 5, right? Especially of how well he played down the stretch. So that was really cool to see. And then the fact that on the graphic here, Stefan Chirilla, Ryan gave 2 jersey swaps to Stefan Chirilla, which it's kind of sad to see, especially Miazga, right? He got injured middle of the season. He only had 1, right? So Stefan Chirilla had more jersey swaps than Matt Miazga. But Ryan also gave a jersey swap to the whole FC Cincinnati 2 team as well. So they had the same amount as Miazga, Loro, Santos, Cheeto, Baird, and Bupenza as well. So I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, great shout. Well, the Academy needed to be shouted out this year. I mean, they did so well. Like, why not open it up to the younger teams as well? And Chirilla, I expect to have a lot more jersey swaps in the coming years too. So this is the first 2 of many for him. Maybe we'll get like a little plaque at the end of the year that we can give to the players and say like, "Here's our jersey swap of the year award for you."
Maybe we probably need a bigger sponsor to do that, or at least a little bit more of an investment. Maybe some fans are out there. But some other notes from this, Ryan. I actually didn't have my first Orishano nomination until episode 55. So June 24th. So our season started episode 39. So that would be February 27th. So it was like 3 months until I had the Orishano jersey swap.
I stole them from you.
Yes, exactly. Had 16 of them, right? So this year, but I thought this was really interesting. Ryan's first and second nominations for Obi were 36 episodes apart and 252 days.
Dang.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
Well, every 252 days, you can expect a really good game out of Obi for me to shout him out. We need more consistency, my friend.
Yes.
No, the unsung hero, Obi, does all the little things right. But yeah, great work on this. Again, keep following what we do for our jersey swaps throughout the year. And then the tallies by the end of the year are always fun to kind of see who we went for at the time. I'm interested to see how many keeper shout outs for like Roman we had as well. But on the flip side, we always do the card of the year, or card of the week, I should say, but we have the card of the year to kind of recap. Collectively, we've decided that the MLS scheduling is going to be our card of the year. We talked about it way too many times, but it was just atrocious. And the breaks, the delays, the length of the season, it was so bad that I'm pretty sure they listened to the podcast and said, we got to make a change. So in the past few weeks, there's been this discussion about should we change the MLS schedule? And around the World Cup time, there is some talks that we're going to move to a more European-based schedule where the season will go roughly from about August to May. Sam, your thoughts on this?
I'm just interested to see, obviously they've been talking about schedule change for, how many years now, how to perfect it, to be able to make it good for not only the players in the league, but also those who are trying to transfer in and out of. But I'm interested to see, Ryan, when they do decide on a change, how is this going to affect the season before? So like
True.
if the season right now is going to end in November, December, right? How is that going to affect the next season, right? So I don't know when you would start to kind of shift that, like slightly, like more and more you kind of rotate it. But you'd have to think this would be like a 2-3 year process, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you do that, or even around the World Cup, like because play's going to have to stop
Well, player
2026 in the
safety
summer.
is got to be number one priority, right?
Yeah.
That's
Playing
got to
that
be
many
number
games
one.
like without
Yeah.
breaks and stuff is not going to happen or shouldn't
No.
happen.
Yeah.
Um, or they play like an expedited schedule or a shortened schedule. Who knows what they could do with that? But something would have to go like crazy for this to honestly happen. The logistics of it would be a nightmare, and I'm glad I'm not in the room that's deciding it. But it's an interesting thought just to make it more centralized to the rest of the world. Personally, like it's nice that we have like soccer in the summer. Like I think it's a really cool thing that the weather is nicer. The majority of the season it's really, really good weather. So that's huge for, this market in particular. Other markets don't really care as much about that. Also more of a reason for us to consider like, do we put a dome on the stadium? If it goes to that, do we fill in the roof and do we close in the concourse? Obviously, that's not going to happen. But yeah, it is an interesting thought. We just wanted to kind of shout it out though, because I think we talked about it so much this year. Card of the year for sure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I know all three of us had our individual takes, individual times this year where we were upset with Leagues Cup or international break or just scheduling in general,
And
right?
the MLS playoffs are still going on.
Yeah.
Like the final is not until December like 8th or something like that, or 9th, I think it is. Which by the way, like Sam, any teams that you're pulling for in this, or do you just not care at all?
No, we talked about this. I mean, we don't really care. I don't have any teams to root for or root against, right? Last year we had a team to root against, and unfortunately they
It's
won
true.
it. But this year you're kind of just waiting to hear like, oh, this team won, and you're like, all right, cool. We just signed, the biggest signing in MLS history, so we're gonna focus on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like Tata Martino is out in Miami, already. And
I did see that. Yeah,
that's like huge news, for the league already. And again, like we have to remind ourselves the playoffs aren't over. So yeah, I know I'm in the same boat as you. I really could care less. There's some really cool stories out there for teams. Like if they were to make a run, like Atlanta just had a dumpster fire of a year. And like they just beat Miami, the biggest upset in like MLS playoff history. For them to go and like make a run would be absolutely incredible. So there is like some cool storylines, but I'm not going to say like I'm going to seek out this team and follow
yeah.
them or whatever. But before we go, we do want to give a shout out on this year for guests that we've had. We had Bobby Edwards, the Academy goalkeeper coach, former FCC goalkeeper as well. DJ Primetime we had on earlier in the year. Go back and check out his interview. That was really cool. We had Kenta on twice. Shout out to him. We love having Kenta on and his insight on things. He's moving on to some cool opportunities as well. And we wish him the best of luck with that. Carter Chapley, our most recent one. That was a really, really cool interview. A lot of good insight from the club. Hope to have Carter back in the future. And then we do have two future interviews to announce that we have coming up. So looking forward to that. And we want to keep bringing out that content like we mentioned to you guys. So thanks again for supporting. Before we go, or Sam, I think you wanted to mention it.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys out there want, a guest on that we haven't had on, and you think it'd be a good either, kind of mix with us on how we talk, what we talk about, stuff like that, feel free to dive in our comments on socials, wherever that may be, at us. Just let us know what you want to hear, what you want to talk about.
Yeah, Lucho would be a great addition. I agree, Sam. Our trivia question and answer before we go. Again, the question was, has FC Cincinnati ever signed anyone from the Belgian Pro League? Obviously, Kevin Denkey is going to be coming over. Sam, you mentioned that Yuya Kubo came over from Ghent, which you are correct. But Kenny Saif had also come from Anderlecht on loan in our very first season. I think that counts as a signing. We had him for a while. In my opinion, that counts as a signing. But yeah, he's the third player, Kevin is, to come from the Belgian league, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Do we know where Kevin is now?
Where Kevin is currently?
Yeah.
I'm probably
retired, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, Kenny.
Yeah,
not Kevin.
I'm sorry, Kenny.
Kenny Saif is, I think, in like the third or fourth division of like Turkish football or something like that.
Got it.
I don't hold me to that.
Hey, at least I was 1 for 2 there. I'll take 1 for 2. I knew Kubo was from Ghent, so
he's playing in the Israeli Premier League, actually.
Hey, shout out to him.
Shout out to Kenny Saif. Haven't heard that name in a minute. But thanks again, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, part of our off-season editions. We do have some cool interviews coming up, so please tune in for those, and we will see you guys next time.